My parents missed my wedding because I chose to marry before my seemingly perfect sister, and now, after 4 years together, their ideal family image is finally starting to crack. I'm 32 years old, and I tied the knot 8 months ago. Aside from my sister, Molin, who is 30, and my parents, everyone else attended the ceremony. I was taken aback by my parents' decision to skip the event, but my sister's absence didn't surprise me at all. We've never really seen eye to eye. Given our history, I should have anticipated this. To provide some context about our family dynamics, I can't entirely fault my parents for always favoring my sister. Throughout her life, she has excelled at nearly everything, becoming the center of attention wherever she went. From the moment she could walk, she dominated every spelling bee, science fair, and talent show during her elementary school years. In high school, she effortlessly snagged roles like class president, valedictorian, and prom queen. Tall, slender, and conventionally attractive, she pursued modeling in college before shifting her focus to a business degree. I still vividly remember her first modeling gig during her sophomore year. My parents threw a lavish party to celebrate, inviting all our relatives and her friends. Her first professional headshot was framed and proudly displayed in our living room, right above the fireplace, where it remains to this day. They simply whispered, "Well done," and immediately began planning Molin's next photo shoot. In the same year I graduated with my computer science degree. She climbed the corporate ladder, landing a job at a prestigious company. By the age of 30, she had already secured a corner office and a corporate car, marking her as a senior executive. Meanwhile, I work as a mid-level software developer for a well-known tech firm. While I find satisfaction in my job and believe it's respectable, it's not the kind of position that parents boast about in front of their friends. Additionally, I'm shorter and heavier than my sister, and growing up, my mother made unkind comments about my appearance. She enrolled me in gym programs I had no interest in and constantly placed me on diets. She would say things like, "Molin never struggles with her weight," or "You could look as lovely as your sister if you just put in a little more effort." Although I learned to brush off these remarks by high school, they still left a mark. Over time, I came to accept that my parents never took as much pride in my achievements as they did in Molin's. What were my options? For years, I tried to win their approval by taking classes they recommended, joining clubs they endorsed, and even attempting modeling for a brief period, a failure my sister still reminds me of. Yet, nothing ever seemed to be enough. I was merely the second daughter, and they were completely captivated by my sister's accomplishments. By my mid-20s, I had given up on trying to impress them. I focused on building my own life, advancing my career on my own terms, and forming relationships with people who valued me for who I truly am. Honestly, things have improved since then. Aware that my parents were always preoccupied with maintaining appearances, I kept my interactions with them superficial to avoid conflict. During our obligatory Christmas dinners and sporadic family gatherings, I would nod and smile as they gushed about Molin's latest job, partner, or vacation destination. With Molin to fawn over, they didn't notice my emotional distance. It was at a tech conference that I met my husband through a mutual friend. He saw me for who I was, unlike my family. He appreciated my dry sense of humor, my coding skills, and yes, even my physical appearance. From the very beginning, he never suggested that I change or compare myself to others. After 4 years of dating, he proposed to me one evening at home while we were enjoying takeout and watching our favorite show. It was perfect. Naturally, I informed my parents about my engagement last year, but their response should have been my first clue. There was no congratulatory excitement, just a heavy silence. My mother then asked if I was sure I wanted to rush into things and suggested I improve my physical condition before the wedding. My father didn't say much during the engagement party, but my husband noticed their odd behavior, which I was too anxious to fully grasp at the time. They spent most of the evening huddled in a corner, clutching my mother's phone. My husband later told me he overheard them talking to Molin, who was clearly upset. They were discussing how this wasn't part of the plan and how they never expected me to get married first. There were a few minor hiccups in the wedding planning process, but I was not yet engaged when my mother had already created multiple wedding Pinterest boards for Molin and showed no interest in helping me choose a dress or venue. I double-checked our records to confirm that we had sent them the invitations, and even the delivery of the physical ones was verified. I didn't confront them about their attempts to gaslight me. Instead, I simply apologized for the supposed oversight and ended the call. Later, my husband pointed out several instances that revealed their true intentions, such as their shocked reactions rather than happiness when we announced our engagement, and how they continually found excuses to avoid helping with the wedding plans. He hadn't mentioned these observations earlier because he didn't want to add to my anxiety during the wedding preparations, but in hindsight, the pattern was clear. The idea that I, the less accomplished daughter, would marry before their beloved Molen was too much for them to bear. Their behavior only confirmed what I had long suspected but refused to accept: I would never be able to compete with my sister in their eyes. The most disheartening realization was that my wedding day, which should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, had turned into yet another battleground in their ongoing struggle to maintain their ideal family image, with Molen at the center. According to family members I spoke with, Molen recently got engaged to someone she had been dating for a year. In family group chats, which I do not participate in, my parents openly expressed their excitement about planning an extravagant wedding for her. They have already boasted about securing upscale venues and luxury gowns, and my mother is taking Molen to private fittings at high-end stores, all the mother-daughter moments I was never allowed to have. Interestingly, many of our relatives have suddenly declined to attend Molen's engagement and wedding parties. My parents' behavior at my wedding has become a topic of discussion among the family. When relatives ask why my parents didn't attend my wedding, I simply tell them what I believe to be true: they couldn't handle the thought of me marrying before their precious daughter. I report the facts as I see them, without exaggeration or an attempt to elicit sympathy. A few days ago, my parents reached out, accusing me of deliberately trying to ruin Molen's wedding. According to their claims, the relatives they've spoken to are using excuses to avoid attending any of her wedding-related events. My cousin, to whom my sister vented, advised her that people are hesitant to come because they've heard about how my parents treated me. My parents accused me of spreading falsehoods out of envy for my sister's upcoming lavish wedding. The problem is, I'm only sharing the truth about what happened. Perhaps they should reconsider their actions instead of blaming me for the fallout if the truth makes them look bad. As circumstances evolve, I find it increasingly challenging to maintain the facade of a relationship with my parents. Their reaction at my wedding made it clear to me that I would never be enough for them, no matter what I did. Their absence on my wedding day is no longer the most difficult part. It's coming to terms with the fact that I never had the loving, supportive parents I had hoped for. Right now, I'm focused on building a life with someone who truly values me for who I am, but I'll keep you updated if anything significant happens. First update: a lot has transpired since my last post 2 weeks ago. After reading your supportive comments, I decided it was time to confront my parents about their behavior at my wedding and their current accusations that I ruined my sister's special day. When they started emailing me about our tainted family history, I knew it was time to lay everything out on the table. During our phone conversation, my parents immediately began accusing me of being jealous of Molen and orchestrating the entire situation. I did something I had never done before. I agreed with them, but not in the way they expected. Instead of defending myself as I usually would, I told them, "You're right. I'm not envious of Molen's career achievements or her looks. I'm envious of the unwavering love and support you've shown her, which you've never made an effort to extend to me." There was a pause on the line, and my mother began to argue that I was exaggerating and that they had always treated us fairly. At that moment, something shattered inside me, and feelings I had suppressed for years came flooding out. I recounted how, when Molen had a modeling callback, my mother canceled my high school graduation dinner, and how Molen's prom dress cost more than my entire college textbook budget for a year. I reminded them of every birthday when Molen's latest triumph overshadowed my own achievements. I pressed on despite my father's attempts to interrupt me with accusations of exaggeration. I told them how painful it was to see their seats empty at my wedding and how my mother-in-law had to step in to help with everything from planning to wardrobe shopping. I also mentioned how they had spent years organizing my sister's imaginary wedding while showing no interest in mine. Their reactions were telling. Instead of listening to with the understanding that I would never be the center of attention, even though we always tried to treat you both fairly, Rebecca. It's not our fault you chose to play the victim. They had just confirmed everything I had been saying, so there was no point in arguing. Even in this final conversation, they refused to acknowledge their role in anything, so I simply hung up and said goodbye. To my surprise, I felt a sense of comfort after the call. Tears were shed, of course, but they weren't the frantic, sorrowful ones I remembered from my childhood. They were liberating tears. For the first time, I had expressed everything I needed to say without holding back or feeling guilty about my emotions. Later, my husband noticed me gazing at the sunset from our back patio and sat down beside me, taking my hand without saying a word. "They'll never change, will they?" I asked him after a moment. "No, but you have," he replied, squeezing my hand. And he was right, I had changed. The young girl who desperately sought her parents' approval was no longer there. They no longer needed to validate the woman I had become after that last conversation. Recognizing that my parents would never be the people I needed them to be was hard, but it was less painful than clinging to the hope that they would change. For the first time, I didn't care what happened at my sister's wedding or in the family drama. I had said my piece, and now they had to deal with whatever came next. What's most unique about this experience is that I feel as if a weight I've carried my entire life has finally been lifted. While it's not the joyful resolution I had hoped for with my parents, it may have been exactly what I needed, the ability to stop fighting for love that should have come naturally. Second update: 3 days have passed since my encounter with my parents, and things have taken an unexpected turn. Mullen decided to insert herself into the drama, but her approach flopped spectacularly. Yesterday morning, she sent me a condescending message. Her tone was unmistakable as she wrote, "What you said to your parents was very inappropriate. They have supported us through every stage of our lives and given us everything. You cannot simply blame them for being bad parents because you are insecure about your life choices." She continued with her usual mix of moral superiority and subtle jabs, saying, "I understand that your wedding was not exactly how you had hoped, but that doesn't mean you should try to ruin mine. There's nothing wrong with wanting to celebrate those among us who have worked hard to achieve certain standards, Rebecca. Not everything has to be a contest." I didn't bother to respond. I realized that engaging with her only provided her with more ammunition. After years of enduring her manipulative behavior, I simply blocked her number. Mullen has never been one to tolerate being ignored, so I figured that would be the end of it. A few hours later, my husband, who was laughing so hard he could barely speak, called me at work. Mullen had evidently been unable to reach me directly, so she found my husband's personal number, likely through a mutual acquaintance, and sent him a series of messages detailing why our sisterly relationship has never been good. She began her first message in a relatively professional tone, introducing herself as Rebecca's sister and someone who cares deeply about our family's well-being. However, it quickly devolved into her true motivations. She told my husband that he had an obligation to help me behave more appropriately because he was the new man in my life. The messages became increasingly patronizing. Family dynamics are complex, she explained to my husband, a professional software architect with an MBA, adding that someone with my sensitivity might not understand the bigger picture. She suggested he help me see reason before I irreparably damaged family relationships. The kicker, however, was her attempt to appeal to his perceived social climbing instincts. She wrote, "Surely you understand that maintaining good relationships with successful family members like myself could be beneficial for your future. Rebecca's behavior is only hurting her own prospects and, by extension, yours." My husband, who has always been able to see through Mullen's facade, found her attempts at manipulation amusing. He enjoyed how she assumed that her corporate status or the promise of networking opportunities would impress him. Using his own words, he said, "She really doesn't know me at all, does she?" When I got home that night, we reviewed the messages together, and I found myself laughing with my husband rather than feeling insulted or outraged. It felt liberating to see Mullen's dishonest tactics exposed, especially when they were directed at someone who was completely immune to them. This experience taught me a valuable lesson about my sister. Despite her accomplishments and success, she remains the insecure adolescent who feels the need to bring others down to feel superior. She assumed she could control me by away from Mullen's wedding drama. Instead of getting caught up in my family's endless power struggles, my husband and I decided to focus on building our own happiness. Success is often touted as the best form of retaliation, but I'm beginning to realize that true success isn't about impressing others, it's about embracing your choices and surrounding yourself with people who support your growth rather than hinder it. By that measure, I feel more successful than ever. Third update: following my sister's futile attempt to influence my husband 2 weeks ago, events have taken some unexpected turns. Despite my parents' urgent attempts to rehabilitate their reputation, the situation has only worsened. I learned through family connections that my parents have been on a frantic mission to rewrite the narrative. They've been calling each relative individually, accusing me of spreading lies out of envy for Molin's perfect wedding. They believe I'm simply resentful because her wedding will be far more elegant and beautiful than mine. According to their latest story, I intentionally excluded them from my wedding to portray myself as the victim. It's amusing because they still live in the same house they've owned for 30 years and have had the same email addresses since the dawn of email, yet they claim I sent their invitation to an outdated email address and physical location. The good news is that their attempts to mitigate the damage are failing miserably. Our family members aren't buying it. In fact, several relatives have shared their own experiences regarding my parents' history of favoritism. One ad recounted how my mother had previously engaged in similar behavior at family weddings to ensure Molin was the center of attention. The way my extended family has reacted to my parents' deception has been the most rewarding development. Key family members, some of whom were expected to play significant roles in Molin's wedding, have stopped supporting her. They may no longer have access to the exclusive venue they were once granted due to family ties. Even a family friend's upscale clothing business has unexpectedly encountered scheduling conflicts. Things escalated at a family gathering last weekend. My mother seemed to become offended when someone innocently inquired about my wedding photos. Out of jealousy, she launched into a defensive tirade about how I had changed since getting married and was trying to destroy the family. Her outburst backfired, shocking many relatives who were unaware of the situation and further tarnishing their already damaged reputation. It's especially ironic that my parents' frantic efforts to maintain their ideal family facade are causing it to unravel. Each time they try to justify their absence from my wedding, they reveal more about their true selves. People are becoming increasingly aware of their deception as they attempt to paint me as the villain. Family members are suddenly taking sides after previously remaining neutral. Recently, even my father's brother, who had always kept quiet to promote unity, apologized for not speaking up sooner about how they treated me. He has decided not to attend any of Molin's wedding-related events with his family. I don't feel the need to address any of this directly, and I haven't. The reality is that my family is taking care of everything for me. When Molin and my parents try to twist the story, they often end up revealing more of their harmful behavior. All those years of remaining silent and tolerating their actions to keep the peace turned out to be nothing more than a cover for their conduct. My husband put it perfectly: over the years, they built a facade of the ideal family, but it was founded on emotional manipulation and favoritism, and it was bound to collapse. Personally, I'm doing better than I ever have. I no longer have to worry about gaining my parents' approval, and the stress of managing Molin's emotions has dissipated. For the first time in my life, I am unconcerned about maintaining their idealized family image. Sometimes, the best revenge is to let the truth speak for itself rather than taking action. I'm grateful to Reddit for giving me the courage to stand up for myself. You have no idea how much your advice and encouragement have meant to me on this journey. Sometimes, you need to see what true family support looks like from strangers you meet online. Thank you for following along. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more shocking real-life stories happening around.